Years ago, I stopped putting others before myself like I was taught. I found myself in a place where I was physically and mentally exhausted. I was full of resentment. I never had enough time. I felt low mood a lot. And I felt like a victim to others and to God. Other Christian women and good coaches showed me that I was completely twisting scripture when I thought that putting others before myself meant that one, I couldn't or shouldn't say no, or two, I needed to keep other people happy and calm. These are big red flag, classic people pleasing traits. And Christian teaching does not require either of them. In fact, these behaviors are destructive to an abundant life with God. So if you're still struggling to say no when it's necessary or to do what's best because someone may have big feelings about it, I invite you to listen to today's show as we really look at the lie we've been sold. Friends, people pleasing is not the same thing as putting others before yourself. But bravo to the enemy for convincing us it was. Welcome back to the weekly fellowship where we gather for deep, transformational conversation in the fellowship of faithful women. I'm your host, Reagan Clement, and I love working with women in my life coaching programs and online community, the Rising Tide Fellowship. In prayer, I was asked to build community for women to be seen, heard, and nourished in this society of isolation and confusion. When I asked God how in the world to build a community like that with so little funds, his answer was simple: collaboration. So in the past year, I've asked many friends and coaches to step forward and offer their time, talent, and resources to make this community something really special for our members. And it's turned out to be really special for ourselves too. And our members have stepped up to contribute their own unique gifts as well. To spend time with us in community, join today at risingtidefellowship.com. And if you'd like to work with me personally, head to risingtidefellowship.com and just click on my name. Let's get started. So let's dive in here. People pleasing. Oh. If you're a people pleaser, and I struggle with this, and that's why it's really easy for me to share about all of this today, but here's our most common belief as people pleasers. I don't really think I people please in a harmful way. I just do it because I'm a nice person. I've said that, and I've heard one version of that 1,000 times from other people. So here's a personal story of mine for us to listen to and dissect together. Okay, I'm going to set the scene here for you. My husband comes in from work, and I sense that he is grumpy. I've just fed my kids their afternoon snack. I'm facilitating a few hours of outdoor play as we rest and decompress from school. When I see my husband's body language, I start to feel a little tense, but I don't really realize it. What if he wants to vent? What if he's mad? What if he ruins our afternoon or overburdens me? Without thinking anything, my body goes into fix-it mode. Calmly, very calmly, for the next 20 minutes, I take little actions that I don't even realize I'm taking. I turn on some music. I grab him a beer. I ask him questions like, what do you want to do this weekend? I send my daughter over to show him her artwork from today. I start throwing out yummy meal ideas for dinner. Some of you may be thinking, so what? There's nothing weird about this. And others are probably going, oh my word, that woman is so stuck. Here's the truth of what's going on under the surface in my story. Learning this from my own upbringing, my body often didn't feel, and sometimes still does not feel safe when there's a possibility of other people feeling big emotions, like in this case, my husband. My body and my mind go into autopilot, and I start creating safety for myself by shutting down emotions in the smartest, safest way possible. Crying baby, soothe it. Tantruming toddler, distract, please it. Grumpy husband, distract and please him before he gets angry or sad. This was just my way. And I looked really kind and caring and like a good Christian woman because I was doing actions like soothing babies and serving my husband. But what's going on the inside? It was actually making me sick. I was sensing a threat in my body every time someone hinted at feeling big emotions. So, and when we feel a threat subconsciously, right? I didn't know I was feeling a threat. When I'm feeling that threat, we respond. We have a stress response: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so I would choose the one that made the most sense. So in my husband's case, you guys saw me fawning really, really well. Like, I'm going to do all the things to keep you happy. And that wasn't because I wanted him to be happy. It wasn't because I wanted what was best for him. It's because I didn't want him to feel big emotions because I couldn't handle it. So that's what I was taught. And if I'm feeling a threat, or if you're feeling a mild or subconscious threat, every time someone might hint at having a big emotion, that's pretty much all day, every day as humans. And especially if we're in a family, like, everybody's going to have a big emotion and they're allowed to. We don't have to control that. So if my body's constantly feeling this subconscious threat, what does that do for my stress levels? What does that do for my cortisol, my weight, my chronic illness? My health really started to unravel, or I would probably still be doing all this. Finally, when I was at an all-time low with cancer, I started seeing a counselor to help me through the cancer process. But instead of talking about cancer, I've told you guys this before, we talked about all of my toxic behaviors that were harming me. And so one of those things we spent a lot of time on was my people-pleasing behaviors. But I actually fought really hard to say that I'm not doing anything destructive or unhealthy. I'm seriously just a kind and caring Christian woman. Like, you can't ask me to stop caring for people. You can't ask me to stop helping people and bending over backwards for people and overcommitting for people, right? But he did ask me, and my counselor did not buy it. And here are some signs that he started to help me unravel. And I want you to see if maybe you see yourself in some of these signs. These are signs that maybe I was doing some unhealthy level of people pleasing. One, we've already talked about it, difficulty saying no. You find it challenging to decline requests or favors, even when it totally inconveniences you or goes against your own needs or desires or even God's will. You fear disappointing others or even being seen as unhelpful or just any disapproval from them, right? Because people don't like it when we say no. Constant need for approval. This is another sign. I was seeking validation and approval from others to feel worthy or good about myself. My self-esteem, my self-worth was really relying heavily on external validation. I needed to make sure that their opinion of me was good, and it mattered to me more than my opinion of me, and it mattered more than God's opinion of me. Really sad when you look at it that way, but I couldn't see that at the time. I also ignored personal boundaries. I constantly sacrificed my own boundaries and values to accommodate the wishes of others or even just their expectations. This could involve agreeing to things you're uncomfortable with or suppressing your true feelings to avoid conflict. I can think of a specific time when someone asked me to keep her kids, and I finally said, no, I can't do it then. And so I said, I have someone coming over that day. I'm already hosting. And so then she went around me and she asked that person to keep her kids. So guess who ended up still keeping her kids at my house? I did. And I was so angry and I felt so violated. And I felt like, oh my goodness, but I would not say a single thing. So I just suppressed my true feelings, stayed with it. And the next time I saw her, I said, sure, I can keep your kids next time. Sure. And just never did anything about it. Another sign, number 4, overextending yourself. You frequently take on more responsibilities or commitments than you can handle because you fear letting others down or being perceived as selfish or unchristian. And this almost always leads to being overwhelmed and burned out. And then the 5th one, and I think this is the most obvious, and this is the one I feel I see the most in my clients. Despite your efforts to please the heck out of your family and friends, you feel resentful or unappreciated. And we talk about this so much, especially in women 45 to 65 who have adult children. So many of these women are people pleasing the heck out of their adult children, and they feel so unappreciated. And you may realize that you're investing a lot of time and energy into your relationships or situations that don't fulfill you emotionally, and they don't really bring you genuine happiness. This is so common in an adult mother-daughter relationship. I see this constantly. People pleasing and unfulfillment. And we're going to go into that. So as my counselor started to like really show me these and really break these down, I was like, wow, okay, fine. Maybe I was actually struggling with most of these, but why should I change? I get it. Like some of those are real burdens, but isn't it still unkind not to help others and people please when I can? I can make sacrifices about what I need in order to put others before myself. That's the Christian way, right? And I'm actually really good at making sacrifices for other people. So really, then I had to really look at the fruit, right? We always test what we're doing by the fruit. And my behaviors were producing some pretty sick limbs. Wasn't very fruitful. It was like dried up, withered trees. One, I was there because I was so physically sick. And honestly, when I realized that, and I openly asked him, I've probably told y'all this before, but I openly asked him, at the time I didn't understand the connection between the spiritual, the physical, the mental. I didn't know that they could play a role in each other. And so I remember asking my counselor, do you think that some of these behaviors are directly affecting my cancer ability to heal from cancer, or it's causing cancer? And at the time, his wife had cancer, and we don't agree philosophically on the best ways to heal from cancer. This man was very different from me. And so I was expecting him to say, absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. Don't go crazy. Emotions aren't going to cause cancer. But instead, he was actually like, 100% Reagan, your behaviors are contributing to your illness. 100%. And I remember thinking, if this guy who doesn't really believe in anything alternative, anything that's not mainstream, if he's telling me emotions can make you physically sick, emotions can show up and express themselves physiologically, then if he's saying it, then I'm going to go look into it. So I did, and it was making me physically sick. So I was willing to change that because obviously I'm looking at cancer in the face and I'm like, I'm willing to change. But some other unfruitful things, it's really exhausting to be a people pleaser. It's so exhausting. Feeling a stress response to others' emotions or disapproval is soul sucking, you guys. It drains every ounce of energy from you and it leaves you feeling unmotivated, unhappy, unfulfilled. You know, you look up and you're like, why is this the like 30th day where it's like 4 o'clock and I'm done? I don't want to call people. I don't want to go somewhere fun. I don't want to like plan a fun. I just don't have energy for life. I have super low mood. And this is like day 30 or day 60 or day 90. And it's like, what is this? And you probably either have experienced this or you know someone like this. And it's that it can be so soul sucking and draining of our energy. It's exhausting to have that threat response in our bodies all the time. It's not our fault. This is something that happened to us. We feel threatened because when we were kids, something happened, and that was our natural coping mechanism to start pleasing, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so it's not our fault, but it's exhausting, and we could change it now if we want to. We have the freedom. Another fruitful thing was that resentment that I was talking about. I noticed that a lot of the people that I said yes to actually made me angry. And I was constantly struggling with just feeling uncharitable. Like when I looked at people, when sometimes you're just in an uncharitable mood and you're like, what's wrong with me? Why am I judging like stupid stuff, like how they ran this function or how they asked me or how that text sounded? Like I was just uncharitable in my heart and I didn't know where that was coming from. It's because I said yes to them when I really needed to say no. And I felt like that was their fault and not my fault. And then number 4, and this is probably the most important one, People pleasing blocks friendship and intimacy. So something that I really, really value is being able to have a real relationship with my kids when they grow up. I don't personally see a lot of that done really well. And so that's something that's really important to me. I want to have a good relationship with my adult children. And I learned that if I cannot stop people pleasing now, there is no way for them to build intimacy and trust with me because I'm burying my authentic self beneath this massive heap of people pleasing behaviors. So they can't really get to know me because I'm burying myself. And it looks like kindness. It looks like sweetness. It looks like, oh, mom will just do whatever we want. But that's as they get older, they're going to be hungry for more. They're going to want the depth of relationship. And that's what I want too. And if I will not present myself, my true heart, my desires, who I really am, if I'm not willing to say, that makes me uncomfortable, son, or please don't talk to me like that, daughter. If I'm not comfortable enough to say what I really think and feel and believe, then they cannot grow closer to me. They cannot choose me because I will not present myself. And it's the same way in our marriage. It's the same way with adult friendships. People pleasing blocks friendship and intimacy. So, like in that example with my husband, with when I was kind of fawning and trying to make everything go away, there was no way for me to grow closer to him and for him to grow closer to me in what was authentically happening because I was so busy trying to make it go away with my sweet little behaviors. But they were destructive. They looked sweet, but they were destructive. So when I really saw that, I was sold. I'm like, okay, I'm sold. And my counselor helped me create all this awareness that we've been talking about around people pleasing habits. I started to move away from those habits. But how do you do that? Like, so I'm not going to people please. But it wasn't until I received coaching that I really got good at what do I need to replace people pleasing with? I needed help shifting from people pleasing to being what? Unpleasing? Like, please don't make me be unpleasing. That's so hard for someone who's in this toxic behavior pattern. So it really, that not knowing where to go from there stopped me for a long time. And what coaching did was it took me to the next level of saying, okay, here's what you replace it with. I want you to learn about purpose. I want you to learn about how to align your life with God and your God-given purpose. Because you see, it's not really about pleasing or not pleasing. It's about getting our heads and our hearts aligned with God. And when we can feel his nudging, we can kind of start to hear his voice, we can say yes to his will every day. And then it's not about saying yes or no to other people. It's not about pleasing them. It's about saying yes to God. And then everything else just falls where it goes. And let me give some examples. So like oftentimes this happens constantly in coaching. I'll have my first session with someone and I'll just ask a lot of questions to help them kind of take their life and their season of life and just be able to look at it objectively, like they're watching a movie or reading a book. And they start to see like, oh, wow, that's there and that's there and that feels good. And oh, I want to put that down. What do I want? What do I not want? And they just start to get really clear. We always say it's clarity. People don't realize what clarity is until they feel it, right? And when they do this, usually by the end of the session, almost always, there's one area of their life where they're really clear, like, oh my word, my marriage needs my focus. Or, oh my gosh, my health has to become my priority. And they start seeing it like, bam, right there. It's this big invitation to say, God's like knocking on the door, like, let me into this area of your life. Let me renovate. Let me restore you. And let me in all the way. Don't just let me in a part of it, but let me in all the way. Let me reform how this area of your life is functioning. And then what happens inevitably is the woman leaves the session with this clear vision of like, God is asking me to do this. He's knocking on the door here. And they leave and they go and they say, and they overcommit to everything else in their life except that thing. So I always give the example because this happened in one of my first coaching sessions. She was called to work on her marriage. Her marriage was like, if it was on a scale of 1 to 10 and 1 is divorce, she was like a 3. And she's like, I've got to work on this. Oh my word, this is where God's calling me. I know what I can do. I know what steps we can take. She left the session, and next time I saw her, she had signed her kids up for 3 sports each. She had signed up to help host a baby shower. She was volunteering to run a book club. And I'm like, okay, all of those things are good and holy, but they are not what God called you to do this season. You told me God is like shining a light on your marriage saying, emergency, emergency. And then you left and said yes to all these people. And it's not the woman's fault, and it's not my fault, it's not your fault, but this is so common because good and noble things started to creep in, and we felt like it would be unchristian to say, no, that's not my purpose in this season. And it never becomes more comfortable. I don't think I'm not going to tell you that now that I've become aware of my people pleasing, I've outgrown it, I have a purpose in life, that now I'm so comfortable saying no. I'm not. It's still uncomfortable. Right now, I'm in a season where I'm pregnant. I have a lot of nausea. And so a lot of things have to be set down right now. And I knew that was going to happen. And we're okay with that. And that first year when a baby comes, you have to put a lot of things down. And I'm totally good with that. But my husband asked me, like, are we putting down the Rising Tide Fellowship? Are we putting down this mission that God's been calling you to? And I prayed about it, and the answer was no. Like, I'm going to give you the things you're praying for. I'm going to give you your bigger family, but I'm also not going to let you set down this mission. And so for me, I heard it loud and clear. I'm like, wow, okay, we'll find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. We'll figure it out, Lord. Okay, yes, sir, I'm ready. And so it gives me a lot of peace to say, I can set down so many things right now in this season, but I'm not going to set down my mission of serving women through the Rising Tide Fellowship. God called me to build this community, so that's what I'm going to do. So right now, I'm being asked to help with Vacation Bible School and this summer mission for the church and all these things at the church. And it hurts me to say, no, because those are good and noble things. And I hope people sign up to help, and they're important to help. Do I feel a lot of emotions around it? Heck, yes. But it's so clear for me prayerfully that I know what my mission is, I know what my purpose is, and there will be another season when I can volunteer at church. And there have been seasons in the past when I can volunteer at church. That's not my season right now, and that's loud and clear. But I want to admit that it feels uncomfortable. I'm sure that it's the right thing. I'm prayerfully aligning with Christ, but that doesn't make it comfortable. It has to be this active choice that I choose to be uncomfortable because it's what God asked me to do. And I think sometimes with Christianity, we like to think that the uncomfortable thing is saying yes and overcommitting. And that's uncomfortable too. Heck yes. But it's just as uncomfortable to say no and align your life with God's will for you. And so it's not just like, oh, do the hard thing, not the easy. They're both hard. Choose your hard. I choose the one that I prayed about and I felt God's nudging, and I want to obey and move where he's nudging me. Let's look at some famous people that we admire and how they got comfortable saying no to good things that were not in alignment with God's will for their life. So I love to think about this because I really fought my first counselor on this. Like, it was really hard for me to say, okay, fine, saying no could be a courageous act. It could be holy to say no. So I studied Mother Teresa. I studied her for a lot of reasons, but one thing that I really found fascinating was her routine. She sets this beautiful routine for her order, for her day. And it was because she had a mission to serve the poor and the ill and the untouchables. And she wanted to serve them. And this was God's call for her life. So she said no to thousands of speaking events, thousands of travel opportunities, thousands of other good and noble things. I mean, she even had to fight her own leadership sometimes to say, like, no, this is where God's calling us, and really had to push through some challenges, even from her own church. But then what, even down to her routine said, no, this is what we're doing in the morning. This is what we're doing in the midday, and this is what we're doing in the evening. And I'm not going to serve the poor when my women need to be resting. I'm not going to take care of the ill when we should be sleeping or eating or praying. She really designed this life, and she said no to everything else. And I find that so fascinating, because when we think about missionaries and we think about what it is to be fully invested, like the craziest, most awesome people, like Mother Teresa, for instance, when we think about this, we assume that they're just like running ragged, serving people constantly, and they're just bending over backwards, over committing, like can't keep their head up. But that's not what she was. She created a sustainable routine so that she and the women that she was in charge of could follow the mission that God put on her heart sustainably. And she said no to everything else that wasn't that. And that took courage. And that probably looked selfish to people. And that probably annoyed people. But that's what she did. I also like to think of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was, I don't know, but he was probably pulled by 100 other agendas that wanted to use his power and sway and the movement behind him for their own agenda. That happens constantly. We see that constantly today. But he said no. He stayed very focused. And what if, I mean, Martin Luther King was a very Christian man. What if he was like, you know what, instead of doing God's will, I'm going to serve in the soup kitchens, or I'm going to serve at church, or I'm going to do something else that's holy and good. But he said no to everything else except his mission. And he walked toward that. And it was uncomfortable and it was challenging in its own ways and ended in death. But he had to say no to everything else that wasn't that, even the good things, even the good people. I imagine his own family really did not want him doing some of the stuff that he did. But he had to say, no, this is my mission, this is my call, and I'm going. And then lastly, Jesus Christ himself. And honestly, I had to hear this one from my counselor. But when you think about Jesus rising from the dead and walking amongst his disciples for days and days and days, and breaking bread with them and revealing the scriptures to them and just enlightening them. And then he's like, okay, now I've got to go. I'm leaving. I'm sending you the Holy Spirit, but I am leaving. And I think a lot of people today would say that is so selfish that he's leaving. There are so many sick people that he could be healing. There are so many countries he could be converting. There's so much work to be done, Jesus. How dare you be so selfish and go to the Father? But that was his mission. So he left. And I imagine the people who loved him and the people who he loved, that was hard. I imagine that felt like maybe even like he was letting them down. But he had his mission to go to the Father and send the Holy Spirit, and he did it. And if Jesus can stay focused and say, no, I'm not doing what y'all want, I'm doing what God wants. Sorry. If he can do that, then we can do that. If he can do it, then we sure as heck can't call that unchristian, because it is Christ himself who did it. And so here are some scripts that I learned from my coaching to kind of help me with these thoughts that I have of like, that's not Christian. Oh, that's selfish. Oh, I can't do that. Here are a couple of scripts that maybe will help you too. I do what God is asking me to do each day. No more, no less. God's opinion of me is the only one that matters. I am safe when other people feel big emotions. I am not responsible for others' emotions. They are allowed to feel what they need to feel. For my kids, I even say, I'm strong enough to allow my kids to feel their emotions. Another script. Even Jesus said no to people he loved. Saying no can be an act of courage, which is a virtue. And lastly, it's okay if I feel uncomfortable. It's healthy and normal. So this week in this talk has really been all about understanding why we people please, uprooting old beliefs that are keeping us stuck in that behavior pattern, and then getting a taste of the beauty and freedom that can come when we align ourselves to God's will instead of the will of the people around us. And there's a quote that says, if you don't follow God's will, if you don't design your own life, co-design it with God the Father, who is running your life? And the answer is the bossiest people around you. The bossiest people, the pushiest people around you are going to end up taking all of your time and making your decisions and designing your life for you if you don't first go align with God and then plan your day accordingly and then say no to everything else that isn't that. But we also need some practical skills here. This is a nice overarching awareness conversation, but this is just an overview of what really needs to be done. This is a tiny speck on the map of the deep work we do in coaching. In my High Tide coaching program, we untangle these habits. We discover why we needed them in the past. And when we discover why we needed them, we're able to forgive ourselves and heal. And then that's easier to move forward and change your habit. Overcoming people pleasing is just one beautiful result of what happens when we do the work of building our self-worth, finding our purpose, and aligning our days to God's will. And so many other skills are going to have to be learned along the way to achieve this. And a big one of those is boundaries. So next week, we're going to really dive into boundaries so you can see, because it's like, okay, if I don't people please, how do I actually get along with these people, right? Like my husband comes home grumpy. If I'm not going to people please him, what's my move? If my toddler's on the verge of a meltdown in the middle of a doctor's office, and I'm not just going to like distract him, please, what's my move? I don't know what to do. My friend's teenagers were, let's say they're breaking my house rules and I'm really upset and she won't say anything to them. Well, I don't want to just people please and fawn and pretend like that's not happening, but what's my move? And all of these situations, I know we all have like 10 of these a day where we come up with things and we're like, if I'm not going to people please, what do I do? And that's really where we're going to pull in the next skill of boundaries and communication and holding others accountable. And we're going to hit those the next 2 weeks, but next week we'll really be focusing on how to set boundaries. All right, ladies. Feel free to turn on your mics, turn on your cameras, whatever, and just, I'd love to hear your opinions, your thoughts, your takeaways.
I have a little child running around over here, but um I just like I resonate with everything that you said. It's all so relatable. And I think that I'm kind of in that phase where when like I can notice it when it's happening, and then it's just like, oh my gosh, like wait, stop, you're people pleasing. And so I resonate with all this and I think it's super, super helpful.
Thanks, Adi. Kirsten, I know you just jumped in and we just finished up the talk on when we were talking about people pleasing and just kind of the journey there. And Hannah, Kirsten, y'all are welcome to jump in and share anything or ask questions. We have a couple minutes here. We can just chat.
Megan, I just wanted to let you know I've been trying to get on since about 10 after 12, and I just
Uh-oh.
wasn't able to. So then I thought, well, maybe when you guys went to the second half, you might notice I was trying to get on. But I was just gonna let you know that because I was trying to get on earlier.
Oh, I'm so
Um,
sorry. I should have made Audie a co-host so I could see that more frequently. I kept checking back, but I didn't see anybody. I'm sorry.
okay.
I missed you.
That's okay. I
Yeah,
felt
I
bad
was
if
gonna,
I'm not so late, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I was the same way. I've been trying to get on for a while and was not able to. And I thought, well, I would get on whenever you finish your first cam.
Sorry, ladies. I should have had Audia. I'll do that next time. I'll make sure I make somebody a co-host. I couldn't manage it all on one screen, I guess. I'm not gonna people please you guys, but I actually apologize for that one. Wait, that's what we
Well,
just talked about, people pleasing.
it's recorded, right? So we'll be able to still listen to it.
Yes, yes, it's recorded for sure.
So,
Yeah,
yes, no problem. Thank you. I
Yeah,
just
sorry
kind of
about
more
that.
wanted you to be aware than anything. So,
Thanks, Kirsten.
yeah. And I don't know. I know maybe Hannah's been here the whole time, but if she doesn't have questions, could you guys do like just a 3-minute like synopsis of the takeaways or something?
Yeah. I know Hannah said she had a little girl waking up. Let me see if Hannah has any questions or feedback, and then I'll definitely do that. That sounds great. Hannah, are you where you want to chat? I just want to make sure I give you space too, but if you're feeding your little one, you go ahead. Go for it, Audie.
I really liked when you were mentioning even Jesus said no to people he loves. I really liked that because that's number one, like I don't think we look at it that way often at all, but that is so like that's so true. Like even Jesus said no to people he loves. And so it's like really reiterating the fact that like people pleasing is not holy and it doesn't make you holy. And I feel like a lot of the times there's a misconception where it's like, well, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna sacrifice this and I'm gonna be in this uncomfortable place. And that's so noble and brave and holy of me. And like to some people in some circumstances it might be, but for everybody, that's not necessarily the case. And so I just like that really stuck out to me today.
That's awesome. Well, I'll share that part too with Kirsten and Debbie. We just kind of started with just opening up awareness around people pleasing. And, just to get you guys kind of started on it, usually we use Christian language to stay stuck in toxic behavior patterns of people pleasing. That's my favorite thing to do. I always used Christian language to stay stuck there. I have multiple counselors and coaches who have really challenged my thinking on that. And so that's why it's like, okay, I can confidently share that 20 people have told me how wrong I am. To really, we think that putting others before ourselves, or Mother Teresa's quote of like give until it hurts and then give some more. We take these things and we pull them out of context and we apply it to everything. And we're like, oh, that means I can't say no. That means I need to keep other people happy and calm. I think it's Mother Teresa, maybe a different saint who has a quote of leave people happier than when you found them. And if we pull these quotes, which are great quotes, out of context, we can really become toxic people pleasers. And I can share some more information on that too. Just the two things that I shared. One, the destruction that causes. It's not fruitful. It actually destroys us. And then two, understanding where it comes from. It comes from a place of feeling a sense, a threat in our body when someone feels big emotions, or there's a change in the room with someone's emotions. You start feeling like there's a threat. And maybe that's because you were hit as a kid. If your dad got mad, maybe you got spanked. And so now your body's like, ooh, don't let anybody get mad. Don't let anybody get mad. Or maybe when you cried when you were a kid, your parents sent you to your room and neglected you. And so your body's like, oh, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't get mad. Don't get sad. Don't get sad. For me, I wasn't, it wasn't as much of like thinking and neglecting as it was that my own parents were practicing fawning and shutting down emotion. So I just copied what they were doing, and they were doing it because that's how they were treated by their parents. They didn't necessarily hit me, but then I learned those behaviors of just, if that baby right now hear that could make somebody mad, that could make somebody upset, that could stress somebody out. And if anybody in the room is starting to feel anything,
Well, it looks like we lost her. I'm sure she'll be back. Um, whoops. But yeah, does that resonate with anybody else? Because I know there's people that aren't people pleasers, but I don't know where they are. Oh, she's back. Hi, Reagan.
Hey, sorry, I don't know what happened. Did y'all all stay on? Was it just me that got lost?
It was just you.
Okay, weird. I'm gonna make audio co-host right now just in case anything else funky happened.
Cool.
But anyway, that's kind of where we were. Hannah, did you want to share something?
No, yeah, I think it all sounded really good. And oh, there we go. Oh, thanks, Tim. Thanks for the truck. No, yeah, I agree with it all. My husband actually was listening to with me as I headed in the car on the way home or got home. The kids were sleeping after mom's group. She'll have to eat soon. But anyways, no, I think it all is true. I mean, it's one of those things like how do you not? It's like can be a hard habit to break of learning to people please or not people please.
Absolutely, it is a hard habit.
It's right there, kiddo. You don't need to pass it.
Debbie, did you want to say something too?
Well, I mean, in addition to that, I find that it's that feeling of unworthiness that
Mhm.
I have an idea that somebody else's somebody else has an idea of how to do something, their idea has got to be better than mine because I guess I'm just going to say it out loud. I feel stupid. I feel like I am unworthy and my ideas aren't any good, and that I don't know. I don't know the correct way to do anything. Therefore, their way has got to be the right way.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I wrote it down to share in today's presentation, but I didn't really know how to bring it in, so I left it out. But yesterday, I asked Debbie in our high tide coach group, I asked everybody just to share kind of what had been a good result for them in the last few weeks from our coaching from the program. And everybody was kind of sharing like that sentiment that Debbie is sharing right now. It's like, if I'm listening to God, then my ideas can't be stupid because I'm literally doing what he asked me to do. And so then suddenly I find myself brave enough to stand up for myself. Debbie shared, contractors kind of like put her idea down and she had to really gear up and like go, wait a minute, my idea is valuable. And I'm not doing this on a whim. And like, I'm prayerfully living my life. And I asked for something simple and you told me no. And I'm going to kind of challenge you on that. And everybody shared something very similar. It was like, God gave me this way to really create beauty. And the person that was helping me didn't see it and they kind of poo-pooed my idea. And I had to kind of fight for it a little bit. I had to fight for the joy that God was inviting. He was gifting me in our beautiful relationship. He was gifting me this joy. And other people were just kind of like, no, we can just do it an easier, simpler way. But because you guys have built this self-worth in connecting to your creator, it's like, actually, I'm going to go ahead and stand up for myself on this one because you're not just poo-pooing my idea, you're poo-pooing God's gift to me. And I'm not going to let you do that. And it's so cool. And we heard that like 5 times in different ways yesterday. It was like the same sentiment. Is that how you would describe it, Debbie?
Yes, exactly. It was just like, yeah, poo-pooing my idea. And wait a minute, God gave me that idea. That's where it came from. And so by not following through with it, in a way, it is that I'm not following God's plan, or I'm not letting you let me follow God's plan.
Yeah, and it's your stuff too. That's what in all of these circumstances, it wasn't like I'm going into someone else's life and I'm telling them what to do. This was each woman's own life, own circumstance, and someone else was basically making them choose smaller, go smaller, do less of what your vision is. And each time it was like everybody accepted it at first, like, yeah, okay, I'll go smaller. Yeah, your idea is probably better than my idea. And then it was like everybody just kind of somehow over the week figured out, wait a minute, this isn't your vision, this is my vision. Like, wait, I get to have a say here. And that's just so cool. But and then we have to actually practice it. So then Debbie had to go, oh shoot, I have to go communicate what I want here. I have to go say something that could technically upset them. But also we were all very blessed because in every circumstance, and it doesn't have to be this way, and it often won't, but in every circumstance in the testimonials yesterday, they stood up for themselves and the person responded like, oh yeah, of course. Duh, yeah, sure. We'll do it your way, you know? And I think sometimes we really freak out about that, like almost like they're gonna spank us or something. And we're like, wait, I'm safe.
Yeah, or we think it's going to be a big deal, and it turns out to be nothing. That they don't care either way. You know, they were just given another idea. We took it to mean as they were trying to take over our ideas.
Yes, love it. Yeah, and then the only other thing that I think is important to share is what Audie said was just we walked through 3 people who said no to to millions of good things. Mother Teresa said no to so many people asking her to do things a certain way, to work certain hours, to serve certain hours, and she said no. And she designed this life where she could obey God's will for her life in a sustainable way. And so we kind of think about these brave missionaries and these holy people as like, well, they just suffered all the time and they were just running around like the chicken with their head cut off, overcommitting, not setting any boundaries. Like Mother Teresa, I'm sure, was just accepting the poor like in her house at 2 a.m. No, she was not. No, she had very, very strict rules. This is lunchtime, this is prayer time, this is nap time, this is serving the poor time. And she kept a very strict order so that they could obey God's will sustainably. And that was just so fascinating when I studied her of like, wow, she was not a, oh, we'll just serve whomever, whenever, wherever. No, she's like, if we're going to do this long term, we got to have some rules. And I got to say no to a lot of people wanting us to do things certain ways. We have to do it where it makes sense and where we can say yes to what God asked us to do and not what other people think that would be good for us to do. And then we talked about Martin Luther King doing it very similarly in his own mission. And then we talked about Jesus Christ himself leaving, going to the Father. So we're in the part where he's ascending into heaven and he's going to send his advocate. And when we think about even Jesus Christ left behind millions of people unhealed. He left behind the sick and the poor and the needy. And then he left behind his loved ones. He left behind all of his friends and his mother who were standing there like, where are you going? Why? Why? I'm sure they were not like, yay, I'm so glad Jesus is leaving. But he had to say no to everything else. And he's like, I'm going to my Father. And there are so many times in scripture where he pulls away or he says no to someone, like Peter. He says no when he first is seen outside the tomb and the woman is like wanting to embrace him and he doesn't let her. Like there are just so many times in the Bible where I'm like, why wouldn't you just let us do what we want to do with you? Like just let us have you the way we want to have you. And he doesn't. He has these very specific things because he's only doing God's will. He's only doing his Father's will. And so I just love how when we look at Jesus's actions, and if we did them ourselves, we would kind of be like, gosh, that's selfish. Or gosh, that's kind of bossy. That's kind of pushy. Gosh, you must be pretty confident if you're just going to say no to all these people asking you to do this. It's like we would almost say that's unchristian behavior, but it is behavior that Christ himself did. And so it can't be unchristian. And so I just want to kind of poke holes in that. That was done for me. That was the like final nail in the coffin for me thinking that my people pleasing was actually kindness and caringness, and Christianity was like, oh my word, when I really get to know Christ himself and his character, it doesn't look like the sweet, simple, people pleasing Christian woman who I'm being. It looks fierce. It looks focused. It looks very completely dedicated to the Father's will. Almost in an annoying way sometimes. Like almost like, yeah, could you just let her hug you when you've just, like, she thought you were dead for 3 days? Can you just let her embrace you? But he has his reasons for obeying the Father's will, and that is Christianity more than what I think looks, quote, Christian. Any other thoughts or questions or anything?
And that was all really good. I think I've I've struggled my whole life to set up boundaries. Boundaries has been, and I've kind of just called a lot of what I've done in the last, like, say, I don't know, almost 10 years as setting boundaries. I haven't really looked at it so much as people pleasing, but there is a portion of it that is that, like setting up those boundaries is helpful. But you said something that just really hit me. You said that you feel a threat, we feel a threat in our own body when there's a change in emotions. And immediately then we try to settle everything down. And I still do that to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't boundary set that. Like, you know what I mean? So like there's another, I don't know, I just feel like this has brought up some deeper things. And I don't even know if I've ever been able to put that quite in words. I just know I get very uncomfortable when other people and upset when other people aren't okay. And my first reaction is to try to solve that. And I'm sure this goes way back to my early childhood. I mean, I know probably where it stems from, but that idea of that we're feeling that in our bodies, I don't know, I've missed that piece. So I think I'm really going to have to do a little searching into that. And the other thing is, while my dad was here, I know you guys know that my dad had open heart surgery and I was taking care of him, and I'm still taking care of him in some respects, but he's back in his house now. And I had to tell him no twice. And whoo, was that hard? Like, I was just like, this is really taking it to another level when you have to actually tell your own father no. And I thought in the past, there's no way I could have done that. But I think I've just gotten strong enough and I know what my capabilities are, and kind of what you're saying. If I push beyond those, then that can be very bad. It actually can have some pretty significant consequences. So, but yeah, it was like putting my words and my boundaries and my things like to action and like actually sticking with it. And again, it was not easy, but it needed to be done. And actually, he took it like the first one, he was like, I didn't even think about that. And then the second one was like, well, of course I can do that. So it wasn't even, a difficult problem. It was just, I had to speak it, I had to say what was going on. So
That is so good. That's so good. Oh man. Yeah, I think it's the hardest for me with my parents because you're going back to the origin of why we started coping that way.
right. That's correct. Yeah.
And it's if you go back and listen to this one, again, I'm sorry that I didn't get you in on time. Go back
Okay.
and listen because there's some depth in really describing that fight, flight, freeze, fawn response.
Okay.
And it's so natural and it's so okay to go, you know what? This was my body's way of surviving when I was little. This is how I coped and adjusted to make people so that I was safe, right? And
Right.
that is perfect. It's perfect. God designed us that way. We adjusted, we stayed safe, we grew up, and now you're here and you're like, oh, now I have the freedom to change my response if I want to.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong I can almost just forgive myself for all the years of doing these behaviors because I learned them for a reason.
Yeah. And that's true. I've been going through some healing from some of the stuff from my past, and I see that you can't go back and change the years that have gone by, but I do look at what can the future look like, and it can look
Mhm.
better. So I like that word freedom because it's like what I don't know, I've kind of come to the point like what you don't know, you don't know. But then
Yeah.
once you understand it, you can go, oh, so I don't even necessarily know what to do with this just yet, besides being aware of it. But then I'm sure there's more steps, you know what I mean? But it's like
Mhm.
I think you start there and then yeah, kind of figure it out. So I just seriously appreciate that comment today because I don't know, it just never I always knew I felt bad or wanting to fix, but I didn't know really why that was happening. So it's just a really good insight for me. So thank you again.
Oh, you're so welcome. I would say to go back and listen to this one, gain some of those extra little things. And then last week I had Anna and Denise on and we talked about, okay, so I've recognized that I'm feeling this threat. Now what do I do with it?
Okay.
And we really go into how to feel it in your body and
Okay.
how to create a feeling of safety. Really, we're trying to create safety in our bodies at this age because like just watching Hannah, I'm pregnant and I'm excited to go into that season of life again. But like with my first two, I'm just gonna be honest, like doing what she's doing, I would have been like really close to a panic attack because it's like there are people that could be disturbing someone and it just felt like a threat.
Mm.
Yeah, it's yeah. Oh yeah, you have a noodle. You gonna have some lunch? Yeah, yeah. I know. I'm gonna change today. And yeah, it's yeah some days, but we're a month in and doing pretty good. So
Well, good job. I'm really, that's something I'm working on myself is trying to create
well,
safety in my
congratulations.
body so that when,
Right. Yeah, congratulations to you. I saw that about your like loss or miscarriage. Oh, we're gonna need an outfit change. About your miscarriage. I'm sorry.
thank you. Thank you.
We need a whole outfit
But
change.
yeah, just trying to create some safety before the baby comes so that that cry doesn't send my nervous system into a frenzy, but more like I can just say, hey, there's a baby crying and I can go soothe them. And because I choose to and not because I can't take this. So anyway, I know we're over time now. I'll let you ladies go. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Reagan. Have a good day.
Y'all too. I'll see you next week.
All right.
Bye.